What we do know is so obvious. I mean, they got around our anti-spying laws by bringing Australia and the British into this, and then they bring in these hire these players as contractors to carry the water, and then handed it over to the media. I mean, this is just absolutely, this makes Watergate a piker compared to what this is. And if the shoe was on the other foot, and this was a Republican doing this to a Democrat, this would be considered the most egregious corruption of our politics since the founding of the country.
Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report Spotlight. Today we have a returning guest, Bob Kudla. Bob is from TradeGeniusAcademy.com, and I am very happy to have him back on the X22 Report Spotlight. Bob, welcome back to the Spotlight.
Hey, Dave, thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for being here. And since we spoke, the Mueller summary came out. I mean, actually from Bill Barr, but the Mueller report now is completely out there, and it says there is absolutely no collusion, no obstruction, and we've been talking about, what Trump was going to do after all of this. What do you think his next move is after this Mueller report completely exonerated him?
Yeah, so now I think he's going to let Lindsey Graham and Nunes and Bill Barr and the IG, I forget the name off the top of my head, not Huber, but they're going to carry the water for him on the next round here. And I suspect middle May is supposed to be the IG report coming out.
Yeah.
And I think that's when the fireworks are going to start. And, and you had Barr, the AG, who's a really, really calm and measured man, throughout the spy word at that hearing. I'm sure he did a shot across the bow there. So there's probably some goods there, and I think they're going to let these guys run with it so Trump can now be above the fray. Because if you notice, the Democrats are trying to keep this impeachment thing alive because they have to try to create some sort of counterpoint or some cloudiness to say, hey, he's only doing this because he's trying to save his own skin. So I think they're just going to push Trump off to the side on this and let the other players now take the lead. That's kind of my thinking.
Do you think, you mentioned Bill Barr saying that, there's been spying going on. Do you think this was done on purpose?
A political campaign is a big deal. It's a big deal. Generation I grew up in, which was the Vietnam War period, people were all concerned about spying on anti-war people and so forth by the government. And there were a lot of rules put in place to make sure that there's an adequate basis before our law enforcement agencies get involved in political surveillance. I'm not suggesting that those rules were violated, but I think it's important to look at that. And I'm not talking about the FBI necessarily, but intelligence agencies more broadly.
So you're not suggesting, though, that spying occurred?
I don't, I guess you could, I think spying did occur. Yes, I think spying did occur.
Well, let me...
But the question is whether it was adequately predicated. And I'm not suggesting it wasn't adequately predicated, but I'd need to explore that.
Oh, that's such a loaded question. Absolutely. I mean, look, the Clintons have been nothing but, complicit in ever since Bill's been in office in terms of just running the country for their own benefit. And I think they were trying to seal the deal. And when they saw Trump was truly a competitor of theirs, they thought they can take him out at the knees with this, and like they did with Bernie Sanders. And now it's going to blow up in their face. But no, for sure. Look, what we do know is so obvious. They got around our anti-spying laws by bringing Australia and the British into this. And then they bring in hire these players as contractors to carry the water, and then handed it over to the media. This is just absolutely, this makes Watergate a piker compared to what this is. And if the shoe was on the other foot, and this was a Republican doing this to a Democrat, this would be considered the most egregious corruption of our politics since the founding of the country.
I agree with that. And we see Giuliani, he's out there and he is continually putting the screws to Clinton. I'm talking about Hillary Clinton. He tweeted out today, Hillary is correct. The report is the end of the beginning for the second time. No collusion. Now Ukraine is investigating Hillary campaign and DNC conspiracy with foreign operatives, including Ukrainian and others, to affect 2016 election. And there's no Comey to fix the result.
You know, the beauty of Trump is his ability to be incredibly patient. And he let the Democrats lay out a case for impeachment against him and used all the words that are going to hang Hillary because, you know, with foreign governments, colluding, get involved in elections. Well, you just now replace Trump with Hillary and you have actually the person who actually committed these high crimes and misdemeanors. And don't forget John Kerry and Iran and all this. You know, he violated the Logan Act after he left office. So these guys are going to be playing on defense, and yeah, Giuliani now he has a heartburn for Hillary, and I think they're going to let these guys twist in the wind, and Biden better hope he's clean on this stuff, where he can kiss any hope he has for a run for president in 2020 as well. So.
I think Biden is actually dirty on this stuff because he was in Ukraine. He put his son on the board of directors of a gas company, and they had Obama remove the prosecutor that was investigating them, and they kind of stopped that. And they replaced that prosecutor with somebody else. So I think Biden, he's in with this whole thing. Obama's in with this whole thing. I think the whole thing is going to be a complete and utter mess for them. I think they're going down. That's what I think. Yeah,
I agree with you. And look, you know, Trump's a master of timing. So, you know, he's not going to screw. Very little of this is going to come out in the summertime for people. They just want to be patient. You know, they need to understand that the American people have probably a 6-month attention span on this, and probably you wait till the fall here when the guys are getting geared up for their primaries. And I think he's just going to let this stuff just constantly come out. So I wouldn't be too worried if not too much comes out in the summertime, although the IG report will be out there, and it'll probably give the Senate, you know, Intel Committee and the Judiciary Committee a chance to hold hearings all summer and then start laying the wood to these guys in the fall. That would be my plan if I was sitting back in the tower, you know, guiding political events. That's the way I would play it.
Let's move over to what's happening with the China trade talks, because we see that Mnuchin and Lighthizer, they're going out to China once again to wrap up the talks, and they're saying that they're very, very close to making a deal. But we also know that China has increased their stimulus, and they're, you know, trying to keep the economic system alive. But China is also running out of dollars. I mean, what is happening in China right now?
Yeah, you know, remember Trump, the guy that wasn't supposed to know anything about how to do negotiations, and when this whole thing started, the trade balance got worse, and they said, "Oh, he's an idiot," blah blah blah. Well, if you notice, the trade balance with China is collapsing into our favor, and now China is running deficits with the entire world, and they're running out of dollars. And what's happening to them is Trump's playing rope-a-dope. Trump has no need whatsoever for a trade deal with China. We already got all the tariffs in place. Now he's working on the intellectual property. He got the industries that he wants protected. And now he's just going to keep, just like he does in every other negotiation. People just need to read his book. He's going to constantly move the goalposts on these guys. And then if they don't do a deal with them, he just says they didn't want a deal. I'm keeping the tariffs in place, and I'm going to probably do some other things. If he gets a deal, he's going to get what he wants. So we're in great position. I've said this all along, Dave, is that you can't lose a trade war when you're the guy that has been on the bad end of a deal for 2 decades. It's impossible to lose it. And what people don't realize, China built their entire economy around being mercantilistic. That means export focused. And when you start losing your export markets, just like what happened to America during the Great Depression, is that you go into really, really, really bad economic straits. I mean, talking Great Depression kind of stuff. Whereas we're like Britain was during the Great Depression, and Britain kind of went relatively unscathed through that because they basically traded within their own empire. And that's the United States. We're big enough to trade within our own empire, meaning 330 million people here, probably do a deal with Mexico, probably do a deal with Canada. And we're going to be in pretty good shape. We could feed ourselves. We could energize ourselves China could do neither. So China is not in a strong bargaining position whatsoever. And I wouldn't be surprised if we don't get a deal done at all and China just keeps wasting away. But what I do worry about is China doing what they did in the end of 2015, is do a surprise devaluation, basically saying our yuan is now going to be 15 or 20 or 25% less to counteract the tariffs they have against the United States. And then it turns into a big currency war, which would be ultimately bad for China, but it would just be bad for the world economy on a short-term basis for the United States as well. And that's why I think that's the card, if I can pardon the pun, that's the trump card that China has, is to throw a big devaluation out there to try to force him to cut a deal, because the short-term pain will be obvious to everybody. But long-term, we're in good shape. You can't lose if your currency's strong. And if you notice the dollar, king dollar right now, it's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And, we're the one-eyed giant in the land of the blind. And that's where we want to be. When your dollar's strong, you can get what you need from other countries. When your currency's weak, sometimes people stop wanting it, like Argentina, Venezuela, Turkey, et al.
I think Trump, he's an intelligent businessman. I mean, what you were just saying, that they might devalue the yuan and it might hurt the U.S. And I think Trump probably sees this, and he probably realizes that this would be an option for them. And I think that he will make the deal with China. I think it's in the best interest, and I think he's pushing for it. And this is the reason why, this is my train of thought here. I believe he wants to do this so he eventually will remove the tariffs, so the deep state, the central bankers, can't use the tariffs against him to say, oh, it's your tariffs that's causing the economy to come crumbling down.
Yeah, I mean, that's a reasonable way of thinking about it, too, because you notice Trump's been pushing back on the central banks pretty hard, too, to keep them from blaming him for their actions, too. Yeah, we're knee deep in some big game theory right now, Dave, that's for sure.
Now, Trump is out there and he's continually tweeting out, how great the economy is. I mean, he tweeted out, he said, "You mean the stock market hit an all-time high today, and they're actually talking impeachment. Will I ever be given credit for anything by the fake news media or radical liberal Dems? No collusion." Now, what's funny is that the economy is doing better than ever. The unemployment numbers are down, GDP great, stock market, I mean, the S&P 500 hit all-time highs, and it looks incredible. And when he came into office, I think the Dow was around 18,000. Now it's at 26,000 and change. I mean, it looks incredible. But the mainstream media, they kind of stay away from it. They don't want to give it to him like, oh, yes, look, Trump made the economy well. I mean, I know you're bullish on the economy. You're saying that it looks fantastic. What investments, where are you looking right now, since the economy is just chugging along here?
Yeah, and just to, too, is, stock market and the economy don't always go hand in hand. Sometimes the economy takes off and the stock market drifts back down. We just had a big run in the stock market. I wouldn't be surprised if there's any pullback, because you had, run to all-time highs, I think, in all the markets. But my view is that President Trump is going to offer an amazing stimulus package going into the 2020 election. So our view is you want to own things that are real. I think you noticed yesterday Trump had Dorsey from Twitter in to see him. I think that whole social media, high tech is going to come under some scrutiny, and that's where a lot of the stock market gains have been lately. So I see a shift, not necessarily a collapse. Money's going to move from tech, I think, into the real assets like gold and silver and copper and uranium, and you're going to get that electric universe with the electric vehicles, and you're going to get stimulus that is going to with steel, with crumbling infrastructure. So I think that's where it's all going to move to next. They don't want the dollar too strong, and that's what's going to support the monetary metals like gold and silver. If you notice today, there were some really, really, really interesting moves into currencies today that dollar and gold typically don't move together, but today they did. And I think that's probably recognition now that you're going to see gold move with the economy and gold move with the dollar. And then that's good for the miners. So that's our thesis, and we're staying with it. Anything commodity related is going to do well. And then I think the areas that we're doing strong, like finance, real estate, high tech, I think those are going to kind of drift back down.
So the Fed right now, and we discussed this before when you were on, they now have decided not to raise rates at all this year. Nothing. Maybe not even in 2020. Since they're not raising rates, how is this going to affect the economy? Is this going to help the economy? Because before they were saying that the economy was really strong, that's why we were raising them. But the numbers got better and they decided not to raise them. They decided to keep them in a holding pattern. What is the Fed doing?
Yeah, look, so this is how you have to look at the Fed. The Fed will tell you anything, but the Fed's really in the business of keeping the banking system solvent. Okay, you can apply moral things to this, but just let's just say this is an amoral conversation. The Federal Reserve's first responsibility is to make sure the banking system doesn't go insolvent, regardless how poorly the banks, operate. So when the yield curves flatten like they did, because he kept raising the short end of the curve, which short end meaning the loans that are a shorter period of time, like 6 month, 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, and then the longer term, like the 30-year, kept coming down in yield. Well, the banks can't make any money when that flattens. And so the Fed saw that, and I think the Fed was also really worried about what's going to happen if socialists take over the economy. Will we get a Venezuela kind of collapse in inflation? So they said they stopped what they're doing, and now they have to create this positive curve again. That means they're going to have to start lowering interest rates. And what people don't realize is that they've now satisfied what the wealthy need in terms of making those assets solvent. But from a consumer standpoint, is the consumers are strapped, and they're going to have to lower their cost of carrying these interest charges, or they're going to lose the housing market, or they're going to lose the auto market, and they're going to lose the credit market. And so I think that's why you're going to see them actually lower rates. And that's the other reason why we're bullish on gold, silver, and et cetera, et cetera. Look, we're competing with Europe, which is almost all negative right now, and Japan, which is almost all negative right now. And I think China's going to go that way too. And if we're too out of balance with the rest of the world, that'll eventually cost us economic growth. So that's why the Fed had to turn on a dime here. And they learned a lesson here. They trapped themselves into a simple narrative, and now they're trying to explain their way out of it. But that's why they can't come out and say we got to save the banks before we save the people, but that's what they have to do. And so that's why you're going to see them lower rates. Going into this next election, you're going to see rates falling, and you're going to see real estate coming back, and you're going to see auto sales coming back, and everything's going to be kumbaya going into 2020. So
you think for the 2020 elections, you think they're going to put this into overdrive? He's going to put the economy into overdrive with having the Fed lower the rates?
Yeah, I mean, my thinking is that they're going to try to do everything they can to get through this next election. And then I think after the next election is when they're going to force the recession, so the president can't be reelected. And this is typically when they do these kind of things. Same with Obama, right? And so they'll try to force an issue here and then to try to then clean up the economy that way. But that's my view. And not that they necessarily want to, but they probably figure that President Trump's probably the best of all choices out there. And so I think they're going to go with the stability versus a chance for hyperinflation.
So if he puts the economy into overdrive for the 2020 elections, and if you look into the future, what would you trade? What would you do with your Trade Genius Academy? Like what would you be looking at that point, and what trades would you make?
Yeah, so we are already positioned for gold, silver, and the miners. We're starting to take positions in uranium because of the just all the nuclear plants being built as a uranium deficit. And then we're going to look really hard at the steel, and we're going to look at the infrastructure companies. And then eventually we'll look at the going into next year, we'll take a look at the home builders. And that's kind of where we are right now. And and that's kind of where we're staying. And, the high tech has played itself out. I think healthcare is going to play itself out because I think they're going to have a bullseye on their back going into the next election. And then the financials, until they start lowering rates, I think the banks are going to struggle making money. So that's kind of where we're putting our money, and and it's working out pretty well for us so far. And we're already in the middle of it. This has already started. You can see it playing out.
Now, you mentioned uranium. You're not looking at uranium because the Uranium One investigation that's going to be coming up with Hillary Clinton. I mean, would that help the situation if that's brought out into the open?
Yeah, well, the Uranium One thing actually started the problem with us. We lost 20% of our uranium stockpile in this country to a foreign nation. And so the Commerce Department just put out a report called the 232 Report, pushed it to the president saying there's unfair dumping of uranium into our uranium reactor buyers, and is killing our ability to profitably mine uranium here in the United States, which is a strategic asset. People don't realize that we're the largest user of nuclear fuel in the world. And so we could be put in a great disadvantage is if foreign countries like Kazakhstan and Russia and China decide not to send us any more uranium and we can't get our mines built. And so I think that's our big play is for President Trump to declare an import duty on uranium to support the domestic miners. And that's where we've been buying, because if that happens, the things that we've been buying will double and triple in price. And that's the play we're taking. If we're wrong, they're still going to go up over time, just at a slower rate, because the world's in uranium deficit, and China and India built 100 and are building 100 nuclear power plants between them, and they're just going to suck all the uranium out of the ground into Asia. And if we're not careful, we won't have uranium for our own plants. So that's our play on that. But Uranium One started it. I mean, Hillary, for her own personal gain, gave the Russians 20% of our domestic supply, and now put us in a strategic disadvantage. I mean, that alone is high crimes and misdemeanor as far as I'm concerned.
I agree. And I just wanted to bring this back. I mean, if we start to see the sealed indictments become unsealed and we see arrests and we start to see trials, I mean, would this help with the economy? I mean, how would America react to this economically? And
it's kind of unknowable to me, because I don't know who they're going to eventually arrest. I just think if they go and if they put, I think, Hillary and Obama, on the stand and into court, I think that could probably be pretty negative. But below that, if it's FBI guys and CIA guys and people like that, then I think the people are just going to just say, oh, okay, Trump was right, and we move on. But I think they go higher. Unfortunately, I think it'll cause a lot of disruptions. And I'm sure there's a lot of political calculus going on right now to see how far to take this. But, he's a riverboat gambler. He may go for it anyway to put put it to the jugular. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see.
Bob, thank you very much for being on the X22 Report Spotlight. Once again, how can people see your work and get your information?
Yeah, so as always, Dave, I put some specials together for you guys, and it's Saturday, I think it's the 27th. You can take advantage of our bundles. I sent you over some charts to show a little bit of how we think and how we trade, and so you could get bundles if you're just a beginning trader or a more advanced trader. We have software that helps you with trading, and then we have training and coaching. So you can go to tradelikeagenius.com and check out our bundles, and we'll be happy to help you. And we're doing really well. We're still averaging annualized 6% per trade gain, and which kind of factors into almost 300% annualized. Cryptos have started to explode again. So cryptos are coming back at the same time. The things that we're trading on the equity side are doing well. And so good time to join us and take advantage and make some money here. Because I think, the opportunity is still in front of us, Dave. There's no time to hunker down. We're still drowning in a sea of opportunity here. And I think there's a lot of ways for people to make money yet.
I agree. Bob, once again, thank you very much for being on the X22 Report Spotlight. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.